Welcome, Army fans. This is Joe Iacono with a special Army-Navy Week edition of the GBK podcast, along with our very special guest, Class of '86, and nationally renowned political consultant, David J. Urban. David, how's everything going today for you?
Joe, it's great. Excited. Another big Army Navy week is upon us here. It's like, for folks who went to West Point Navy, I don't think anybody else can really understand what it means, right? This week means to people, because it really is that kind of exciting. It's when you're at the academy, there's nothing better, nothing better for me as a grad each year than the opportunity to see some of my fellow classmates, other graduates, and it is kind of and I don't mean this to be pejorative, but it is a brotherhood, right? And
Yeah.
in terms of, since I'm not a woman, I can't say sisterhood, but it's a
Yeah.
brotherhood. People who I've gone to school with, who I've gone to war with, who I've, spent my life with. My wife is tired of hearing the same stories about, what happened when you're cadets over and over and over again for 40 years. And so, but it's a culmination of all of that, right? And I think, Joe, to a large extent, I think Army Navy represents the best of America, right? It absolutely represents the best that America can be, the best America is. When people watch that game, there's a reason it's so popular still, is because people watch that and say, look, these guys don't have NIL, they're not using the portal. Most of them don't go in the, play in the professional football, and this game is fun, and the honor and the tradition behind it. It's just a great thing to be a part of, and couldn't be any more proud, right, than be a graduate than on Army Navy. Whether we sing first or second, right, it's always like that. That's the most proud I think I am all year, right? Is that moment, at the end when you're standing there and it's kind of the game's over. And as long as we didn't get blown out, it's embarrassing, right? Like, but
Right.
but still, there's that tradition of singing and being respectful, and it's so important. It's missing in America, right? And I think that's maybe why people yearn for something like that. They watch it and they say, "Wow, I wish more sports were like that," right? You turn on the SEC championship, and those kids, they've changed schools 5 times.
Right.
They're getting millions of dollars in NIL. They have no more fealty to their team than they do, Man of the Moon, because they're all kind of packing up and going to the NFL shortly thereafter.
Right.
So, I think our game is special for a variety of reasons, and this week, leading up to it, is really, it's kind of exciting. My colleagues in my office here got some Navy guys, right, some West Point guys. It's always good natured ribbing,
Good.
and
Yeah.
the whole thing along the way. So just exciting. It's great time.
Good stuff. Well, it's funny. You just kind of gave an outline of our entire conversation. You kind of hit the high points of some things we're going to dig into throughout. First of all, we know you're super busy, so thank you for joining the podcast. Secondly, thanks for following GoBlackKnights.com on Twitter. We appreciate the follows there.
You
Uh,
always have good stuff. You always post good stuff. I'd encourage people to, you know, like and follow, as they say.
Thank you. We appreciate the free shout out there. I think you mentioned, David. Are you going to be able to make it to the game in Baltimore this weekend, or
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
You
yeah.
are.
Going to the game this weekend as well. I pointed out, I'll see the president and President Trump, and I reminded him that I took him to his first Army Navy game in Baltimore as president elect. In Baltimore in 2016, he went as president elect. I went with him, took him to the game, and he is. I tweeted out this last week. It was retweeted this week. President Trump is on his way to passing President Truman for being the president who's attended the most Army Navy games. Truman has been to 7. Trump's been to 5, but Trump has the opportunity. This will be 6, 7, and 8. Trump will be able to be 8 to Truman 7. So
Wow.
um, I'm sure he's going to be focused on it. And the President Trump's a big supporter of the game, and loves going, and loves, obviously, the men and women in uniform. So it's always fun. So I will be there. I'll be there, Johnny Mac tailgate beforehand, and with my classmates, and hopefully the weather looks like it's not going to be too bad, so won't be freezing
Yeah,
too
I think
much.
it's supposed to snow the night before, but just kind of cloudy on game day in the 30s, which for Army Navy is balmy
Fine,
a
it's
little
perfect.
bit.
Yeah,
That's not
it's
bad.
fine. It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that 2016 game you mentioned is my favorite all-time Army Navy game, of course, because it's when Army broke the 14-year losing streak. It was the last time we were at M&T Bank Stadium
Yeah.
in Baltimore, and I have super fond memories of that game. So thank you for bringing that up. And you kind of hit on this in your intro, David. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Coach Monken earlier this afternoon at his press conference. With everything going on in the world of college football today, right? NIL, transfer portal, kids getting in fights with their coaches and their teammates, kids like acting like idiots on and off the field, full universities now opting out of bowl games. It was one thing when some kids opted out of bowl games. Now you have entire teams and some teams that are supposed to be the example for college football whining and opting out of bowl games. How counterculture is the Army Navy game and how important is it in American society right now?
Yeah.
It's really, I feel like, without getting preachy, the last 5, 6 years, America's gotten so selfish as a society and a culture. And this is the ultimate selfless service bowl game, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Joe, it's the what's the saying? It's the only college football game where both teams are willing to lay down their lives for those in the stadium, right? And that is really saying something. If you stop and think about it, that's what's happening, right? You did it, I did it. Once you graduate, you raise your hand. You go, you swear an oath, the Constitution. You go on and serve as an officer in either the Navy, Marine Corps, or the Army. And so I don't think that's lost on people, the specialness of it all, right? And to your point, right, college football has become such a mess with this, with the playoffs, which are kind of a joke, and then I mean, this year it's been shown to even be more of a joke and kind of, I say corrupt, but and I don't mean corrupt in somebody's making money. I mean just corrupt in it's lack of the love of the sport almost, right? If
Mhm.
you really want to be, they have these polls all year, the coaches poll and the AP poll. And then at the end of the year, they have a couple guys in a smoke-filled room. They determine who's going to play for the championship, which either you get rid of the polls, right, or
Yeah,
And I would say the coaches poll could be a little bit more. So maybe just stick with the AP poll, which is sports
right.
writers who are kind of they don't really have a dog in the fight. Traditionally, they're kind of
Yeah,
neutral. So if you would have just taken the top 12 teams in the coaches poll and put those in the BCS, playoff thing, I think it would have been everyone would have been like, okay, that makes sense,
yeah,
and you'd have been moving forward here. But yet, this kind of the twisted logic that they use to pick these teams really shows the kind of the problem that college football is facing right now in terms of there's a whole lack of trust, I think, in terms of what's going on in college football because of NIL and the portal and all these things. It makes it's no longer the fun game it used to be, right? In a lot of
right.
ways, it's become this different game and weird. It's become like an adjunct of the NFL almost to a certain
Yeah,
extent, right? You get, because
it's
most of
like
these
NFL light or
kids are
something.
getting a lot of kids are getting big NIL money, right? And they're not playing for the love of the game. Everybody who's suiting up at Army, everyone who's suiting up at Navy is playing because of one reason and one reason. They love the game, right?
Yep.
They're grinding it out for the reasons, for on the fields of friendly strife, for sowing the seeds, and on other days and other fields will bear the fruits of victory, right? And so that's why they're there. They're there for the leadership. They're there for the camaraderie, the fellowship, the brotherhood, not because they're going to go get a fat contract. And so it's in one hand, it's really challenging for Jeff Monken as a coach because he doesn't have those things available to
Yeah.
him, NIL or the portal, and we lose people to the portal going other
Yep.
places. We don't get people coming in. We lose people.
One
So
way. Yeah.
the portal is a one-way portal for us, which is a bad thing. But yet, Jeff Monken and the Navy coach and the Air Force coach and the athletic directors like Theo's done a great job, right? Since he stepped up,
Yeah.
I really can't. I mean,
He's
he's
outstanding. Yeah.
he's a great guy. I mean, I've got nothing but great things to say about our athletic director at Army.
He comes
Great.
up, sorry, he comes up to the press box every game and thanks the media for being there. Like I've never
Theo,
seen anything do that.
Theo's a rock star. I mean, really,
Yeah.
we're really fortunate to have him at Army. And so, I think that our program, I'm proud of what the program is. Would I like to see a couple more wins this year? Yeah, some of the games, this is why they play the game, right? Some years you're like we were last year, they're champ. You
Yep.
win by a couple points. Some years you lose by a couple points. This year was a lose by a couple points year, right? Instead of a win by a couple points. But like as you know, Joe, this coming Saturday is it's all the marbles, right? As you remember last year, we won the conference championship and then we lost to Navy, right?
Yeah.
And I think losing a Navy is more consequential. Like, does anybody remember that we won the championship? No, nobody remembers
No,
that. People
no.
remember you lost
Yeah,
to Navy,
nobody
right?
cares really except a
Right.
few people. Yeah.
So, I think this game is disproportionately large and on the schedule for all the right reasons, right? For all the right reasons. And so I'm excited. Navy's got a great quarterback, a great team this year. But we had a great quarterback and a great team last year, and we ended up
Yep.
losing to Navy. So that's the good. Any given Saturday, right? Any team can win, right? And so I look at going in there on Saturday. I think it's level playing field. We're going to come out. People are going to be, they're going to be hitting hard and running fast. And well, the best team's going to win at the end of the day. So super exciting. I'm not Nothing's predetermined. I think I like our chances. I'm sure Navy will be favored. They've had a great year. They got a great quarterback. The kid's really exceptional. But we've got a great team too. And
Yep.
so maybe not as many big name kind of stars like Navy has this year, but we had those last year, right? And we
Right.
ended up losing. So it's a great competition. Um, Fought on a level playing field and just exciting. I mean, it's kind of trite, but all the pageantry and it's like Christmas a week or a couple weeks early.
Absolutely. It's funny. In the Iacono household, we celebrate two holidays in December, Army Navy Day and Christmas. So, you mentioned, you're a class 86 grad and you were actually a recruited football player before an injury derailed your career. And you were at West Point, during the Jim Young revival in the early to mid 80s there. Can you compare kind of what Coach Young did when you were a cadet and a player
Uh,
to what Coach Monken's done at Army the last 11 years, especially as you mentioned with some of the roadblocks and obstacles that Coach
yeah,
Monken's had to face in today's modern college football landscape.
yeah, boy, when I remember when I showed up as a recruited guy, and by the way, the program has changed so dramatically, Joe. When I showed up, I think my in the locker room at the state, you have to remember back in 1980, this was 82 when I showed up, right? There was no that whole weight room, that whole complex, that didn't exist,
That
right?
didn't exist, right? Yeah.
There was a JV locker room, and then there was a like a varsity locker room. The JV locker room looked like a prison locker room, right? It was like literally like high school lockers and like an old Universal. Remember the Universal gyms, right?
Yeah.
Like it was an
You
old
had the
Universal.
one set up with the
Yeah, it was
four.
like one stack, right? Like it had like maybe 150 pounds on it or whatever was on it,
Yeah.
right? It's like a physical fitness museum. It looked like, right? And so, um, but since I was a recruited guy, I got the dress in the varsity locker room, right? So
Okay.
my locker was right next to Daryl Williams. That's how Daryl Williams
So
and
the
I got.
suit, yeah.
That's how we got to be friends. And now when Trump was president, I helped to get him, help Daryl get to be superintendent because he was. I was able to vouch for the guy. I said, listen, Mr. President, I've known this guy since 1982, right when I got there.
Right.
But so I don't remember the guy's name. I think it was Kavanaugh, the guy who was in just before JY, and
Okay.
was the coach who was replaced. And it was like flipping a switch, man. When Jim Young came, the program was really revitalized. The energy, the excitement, uh, the professionalism, the I want to say people believed that they could win, right? That there was this belief. I don't know what it was like before because I
Right.
didn't play there before. I was under the previous coach. Um, well, I shouldn't say that. He was there my freshman year. Coach Young came in my junior year. So I mean my
Okay.
sophomore year, my yearling year. So that's when I was leaving. I got injured as a plebe, and
Okay.
so JY came in when when I was just headed out. But I only had one or two meetings with him. But I've developed a relationship subsequent. But I know that my classmates, and this is the killer part for me, right, Joe? So I got to watch my classmates and my friends and the guys I played with, right? I used to go up there, went to the locker room and, we practice and everything. But my friends, Kurt Gutierrez and Rob Healy, my Doug Black and
Yeah.
the
I
guys on
know
my
these
team,
names. That's good.
the
Yeah.
guys on my team, right?
Yeah.
They ended up going that first year. They, well, not that first year, but over those next couple years, they went to the inaugural Cherry Bowl and they beat Michigan State in the Cherry Bowl, right? They went and played against Montana State and Japan in some bowl in some
I
game in
remember
Japan.
that. There was a bowl game in Tokyo
Well,
or something.
it wasn't a bowl game. It was a game. It was just like an away
Oh,
game
okay.
in Japan, right? It was super cool. And then we beat Illinois in the Peach Bowl, right? Which was an
Yep.
incredible victory. And then I think the year after I left, maybe in '87, Army tied or Army lost to Alabama by like a point, right?
Yeah. Derek
And
Thomas blocked like 3 field goals. Otherwise,
yeah,
Army would have won.
it was
Thomas
just
was
so
just a
that
freak of
so
nature.
that was the kind of the beginning of like we believe, right?
Yeah.
That we can play this game. And of course, he brought, Jim Young brought the wishbone there and said, like, look, we can compete. We run this offense, right? Nobody else ran it, and we started and became a very big force, and it really I think turned around Army football and the belief that what kind of program we could have and what kind of kids we could recruit, and was really instrumental in changing the kind of the future of Army football. And then of course now you have our current coach, who just has Coach Monken, who's by all accounts just a phenomenal guy, right? Not just the record, but what he does for the young men there and the brotherhood, and he's really transformed the team into taking it to the next level of college athletics for us. At Army, it's really transformative. And listen, when we get the stadium done next year,
Yeah.
it'll be it's just going to be a different place to kind of watch a football game, right? I mean, you
Yep.
and I back in the day, I mean, it was like I said, we had a rack of weights in the Universal. Now this is as good. We have an indoor practice facility. We've got the things. We've got world class nutrition programs and weightlifting and just
Oh yeah, I mean that weight room is as good as anything I've seen at the P4 level, really.
it's spectacular, right? It really is.
Yeah.
And the coach, and it all comes down to the coach though. Again, like you got a coach who, when you're thinking about where your kid, you're going to send your kid to go be, mentored under, right? When Jim Young used to be there, you felt the kind of same kind of way. Jeff Monken's that same kind of character. You want to, if you got a young man who's sitting at home and you say, who's going to teach him, who's going to be his leader, who's going to be his mentor. I think Jeff Monken stands kind of at the top of the list of places I'd send my kid.
And David, as we kind of start to wrap up, what's your favorite Army Navy tradition? You mentioned the alma mater. Do you have any fun stories from when you were a cadet? Any spirit missions or anything you guys did that
So
you could
Joe,
share
I've got so
on
I'll
my
give you a couple.
podcast here?
I'll give you a couple quick ones, right? So a couple quickies, couple quick takes from David Urban, right? So I had mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention to you, I was a two-time STAP attendee, right? Summer term academic program. I'm not
Yep.
quite sure what they call it these days, but it's when you failed a class at West Point, right? And
Yep.
you were courtesy of the dean, you got to stick around. Well, because of that, one Army Navy game, I had to boomerang back, right? So it was Army
Uh,
Navy. I had to go on like a school bus, right? Like the morning of the game, like you leave on a school bus, you get to the game like 5 minutes before the game starts. We
but
go to the game, we do the march on or whatever, and then we are like literally like chain gang back to the bus, the school bus, and we went over in Philly to one of the like like soon to be decommissioned military sites right off of I-95 going back to West Point. It was an armory, right? And it was just like terribly poorly lit. It was like a gulag, literally, where they served us a meal on like a metal prison tray, and then we got back on the school bus and went back
That's
to
old
West Point.
sport.
That was, by the way, that was the worst. That was the worst Army Navy experience I
I was gonna
had.
say that doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
That was not even that was terrible. Not even not fun. It was terrible. Now, contrast that. I've gone with the game. I hosted the President Trump in my box several times. I've flown an Air Force One with him. So contrast that game going with the president. It's kind of a night and day. But for years, one of my best friends, a guy named Ken Braithwaite, he was the Secretary of the Navy, and so for years he and myself would go to the games, and we'd sit in 400 level. We'd get whatever tickets we could get to the game, right? We'd sit together, and
Yeah.
there was a game when Clinton was president. He and I went, and it was in Philly, pouring rain. I mean, people weren't even sticking around. It was raining so hard, and we had trash bags. We had literally we had our rain gear and we had trash bags on over top of our rain gear.
Wow.
We were in the front row, and I had like an Army hat on. He had a Navy hat on. And Clinton came across at halftime, and he shook our hands and talked to us. And because there was nobody else there, it was kind of empty. The stadium was
It's
pouring rain
empty.
so much. That was another memorable one. And then I'll leave you this one. Like I happen to be pretty good friends with Pete Dawkins, with General Dawkins,
Yeah.
who just for an incredible man, incredibly great guy, happens to be a good friend, not just a West Point legend, but just an American legend, American icon. And
Right.
so a year or two ago, he was at the game with me, and we were singing the alma mater at the end, and my wife filmed he and I singing from behind, and so that's a very special memory that
Oh,
I
cool.
that I keep. Right, when my wife first met him, we were at an Army football game up at West Point, and my wife had no idea who Pete Dawkins really was. Right,
Yeah.
so on the jumbotron, they were showing like the Pete Dawkins story, right, basically about who he was, Heisman Trophy. And she's looking up and she goes, "That's you?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I looked at Pete. I said, "Remind me never to come to any Army football game with you ever again, because Pete is just as handsome today as an 80 whatever 89
Oh,
year
I
old.
know. The guy's like in better. I'm like 54, and he's in better shape than I am,
He's a
probably.
great guy. So it's always an honor, right, for me to be able to kind of stand on the shoulders of those kind of folks who came before us, right? And that's part of the whole, like, grip hands, the long gray line, all those things that make West Point what it is, right? You look back at those old games and the footage and just about the tradition of Army Navy, and that's what it's about. It's about, this is the same game that was played before and before and before and before, and hopefully will be played long in the future, and honors all those things that are so important, right? Like in our culture, the duty, honor, country, right? This game kind of is the embodiment of that, and I think it's so important, and it's just really special. So for those people who can't make it this weekend, too bad. You should try to get there some point. Watch it on TV, but it's not the same.
Yep.
I tell people, so Joe, one of the things that I do is I bring a lot of business leaders and executives and Jamie Dimon and Elon Musk and different people to the game who've never been before, and when they come, they're just they're just blown away. They can't believe how they're like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever done. Last year, so I'm good friends with this guy Jason Garrett. Maybe you remember Jason.
Oh
Jason
yeah.
Jason was a quarterback for the Cowboys and the coach of the
He
Cowboys.
just got he just got hired at one of the open head jobs in college. I'm trying to think who
Oh,
hired.
oh, oh, I didn't even know that. I just I've been
Yeah, I can't
I'll have
remember
to
who
Google it
did
right when we're done
one of
because
the open jobs. Yeah.
I haven't talked to him this past week, and so I hang out with him a bunch. So it said to at one point he's like, I really like to come to an Army Navy game, and so last year I took him to Army Navy. He came with me, right, and he was just blown away. He'd been to lots and lots of things, been able to participate in lots of things in his life. Think about it, he's the coach of the Cowboys, right, and
Yeah.
uh, and he loved coming to the game more so. He played at Princeton. He was a quarterback at Princeton.
Right.
He was a backup quarterback for the Cowboys, right? He's got lots of
Yep.
great stories. But everybody wants to be a part of Army Navy. Everyone wants to sample it because it's such a special thing. So, lot of people will be there this year. I think it's gonna be a great game. Weather's gonna be nice, so hopefully we can come out on top at the end when it's done, and we can sing second.
Absolutely. Like you said, I mean, Navy's loaded. They have one of their best teams they've had in a while, but you can never tell with this game, as was the case last year. And, what a lot of us have noticed, especially since Coach Monken's been the coach, is usually the team that's the favorite struggles and the underdog plays up in these games, we've noticed. So,
Well, it is. It makes sure it's the ability, Joe. It's the ability to redeem yourself for the whole season. Those narrow losses. Army had a lot of narrow losses. So
yeah, they
Army,
were 4-4 in one score games.
yeah,
So, yeah,
if Army would have done that, you'd be have a different record, be a different place, right? This is
yeah,
one game where it all gets level set, right? People don't care. Once this game gets played, all they care about is that gold. You get that gold star, right? Did you
yep,
beat Navy or did you not beat Navy, right?
yep.
And
And the
that's really the
trophy
focus
this
of
year
this.
since we both beat Air Force. So,
Yeah.
yeah. It's good. Well, hey, David, really appreciate your time today.
Joe,
Thanks for joining us on the GBK podcast.
thanks for having me. Hey, thanks for doing all what you do too. By the way, keeping the flame alive and spreading the gospel. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. We love promoting Army football. Always a pleasure. Army fans, stay tuned. We have another special guest from outside the world of football tomorrow morning that I think you're going to be excited about. And we'll keep the coverage coming. Army Navy week. Go Army, beat Navy.